Hi, I'm Daniel, and you're watching Rise of the MattMobile.
Hey there, it's Matt Munson here for another episode of Rise of the MattMobile. I believe this is number 34. What I'm going to do today is give you a quick walkthrough of the stuff that I've accomplished on the car over the past few weeks, and then I'm going to sit you down and walk you through some of the techniques that I'm using to restore parts of the body that need some work. I think when we last left things, the shell was still up on the hoist. It's above the chassis because I'm welding in a bunch of support arms that are going to hold it in place. Here's a rare view of the entire workshop. Don't get to see that too often. And while the shell is up on the hoist, it's afforded me the opportunity to climb inside and build out all this square steel tubing. I'm building out like what's going to be the infrastructure of the cockpit, a lot of support stuff, a lot of protective stuff. I've also fabricated a rear bumper, and that's also going to be a mounting point for the turbine. Over on the sides you can see some mounts that I made that'll hold the rear end of the shell up, give it some support. And you can kind of see the basic gist is I'm using 2x2 square tubing, and I've got a bunch of these little mounting points all over the place. Got a couple roll bar kind of things for support. You can see Bo the welder has done some work. He actually reinstalled the rear axle. There's still a little piston that needs to be squished into place. But with that back in place now, I can reinstall the drive shaft, which I still need to get shortened by about 1.25 inches, and that will allow me to really begin proper on the fabrication of the cockpit. I need to build a tunnel for that drive shaft, and that's kind of really the starting point for the cockpit. Another view of what's going on inside. And look, there's some of Ewan's TARDIS pieces up on top. And since I've got your attention, I'll show off another little project that has been going on here at the Matt Cave. This is a Harley Davidson that Bo has spent a lot of time restoring. I guess I did some work on it, but for the most part, it was a Bo the welder effort funded by the Rise of the MattMobile. Or I guess funded by me. But I like it. It's cute. Front view of the car, not really looking much different. I did put on a coat of black primer. I don't know if that was on last time, but that'll just help reveal some of the flaws in the body. And speaking of flaws in the body, that really brings us to what is going to be the focus of my efforts today. I wanted to give you guys a quick walkthrough of this section of the car and just show you what I'm up against. I'm going to use this thing to point at different things. Like for example, right here there's a little bit of unevenness, there's some growth there. This surface is uneven, this is some putty that I still have to sand down. There's just all kinds of little imperfections like up in here that need to be bondoed or smoothed and sanded. And I usually end up doing this in multiple passes, and that is kind of what I'm going to demonstrate for you today. This whole thing's a giant mess, and unfortunately this is very indicative of the entire car. Now please don't get me wrong, I don't mean to suggest in any way that I'm not thrilled with the body. It just needs work. It's a kit. It's like if you bought like a little resin kit of a phaser or a blaster or something like that, you know, it's going to need some work no matter what. This is just on a much bigger scale. This is the putty I'm using for my bodywork. I usually use something like this to spread it on evenly over larger areas. I've got some files here. In general, I just stick with like a little sanding block and some sandpaper. Not really a whole lot of like exotic tools or anything, just run-of-the-mill stuff. For those of you who've seen any of my other videos, you know that it's always about safety first. Actually, it's about getting the job done first, because you know, if it was just safety, you wouldn't actually get any work done. So a very close second is safety first. So I've got my eye protection on, because you never know when a little piece of paint or a little piece of putty is going to get flicked out and just blast your eye. It can ruin your day real quick. I'm also wearing latex gloves. That's just really to keep my hands clean and, you know, so I don't have to scrub the heck out of them at the end of the day. Normally, I'd be wearing either a dust mask or a respirator, but because I'm going to be talking during this, I won't have one on. But like if I'm going to be in here for a couple hours sanding and primering and puttying, mask. First thing I'm going to start with is this putty down here. I laid this in yesterday, and you can see it's kind of a deeper green, so I can tell it's fresh. And these were originally covering up little dents and dings and stuff like that. So I'm just going to be using my sanding block. And what's great about a sanding block is it will help you get a flatter surface. If you've just like got a piece of sandpaper on your hand, like this one, like if you were just trying to sand it down this way, it's much harder to get a flat surface. and what you'll end up with is little dents and divots, and much more subtle than that. But so for areas like this, definitely want to start in with a sanding block. You can see how the putty sort of switches from the darker green to a lighter green once it's had some sanding done to it. And what I'm really looking for, like, I know what the surface looked like underneath before I puttied it. I know it was like full of pits and scratches. And what happens is as I sand down, those scratches become visible again, but only because they're now filled with this light green putty. Like if we look over here, where this is a very smooth surface, right here, but you can see how there's part of it that's green. That's because there's putty filling a hole. Because I feel quite confident that you don't want to watch me sand for 20 minutes straight, what I'm going to do is do some sanding, take some more videos so you can see the before and the after. Alright, I've got about a half hour of work into this, and honestly you can barely tell. But what this recent round of sanding has done is really just revealed more places that I need to work on. Like there's this little guy here, there's some parts in here that need more putty. I don't want to just end up sanding this all away, so I'm going to have to build this up a little more. You can see over in this area, like I've added some putty in here, but it obviously didn't build it up quite enough because it's still, see, because this is where it's like comes in handy where the putty changes colors as you sand it. So you can see the dark green stuff is lower and this is higher, but that's already sanded, so that means I need to build this up. You can see this lip here needs more work in here. Looking up inside here, all these little boogers in here, ugh, it's just maddening how much work there is to do. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go in with just some rattle can primer. Usually I would load up my spray gun with this heavy build buff primer, but for the sake of this video, because that's kind of a big process, for the sake of this video I'm just going to use rattle can primer, and what that'll do is really reveal to you just how much work still needs to be done. It's actually kind of depressing. But for this step I'm just going to use this stuff, the Duplicolor Filler Primer. It's really not a very good primer. I mean, it's fine for the hobbyist, like it's great for making props, but because I'm making a car that I plan on driving on the road, again, it's not quite up to snuff. For those of you that were scrambling to the comments section to point out that I wasn't wearing a respirator, you're absolutely right, and that was really bad form. I'm a terrible YouTube video host. At a distance this looks okay, but you'll see when I go in closer it's not. The primer has really revealed just how much work there is to be done. There's little pock marks everywhere, little bits of unevenness. Up in here there's even some holes that I didn't notice before. Just lots and lots of frickin' work to do, and honestly all I can say is welcome to body work. It's just like this non-stop, and you really need a great deal of patience and perseverance to be able to have it happen, and frankly I don't. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit more work on this, and I'm just going to let it go. And oddly enough, in between letting this paint dry, I ran into my neighbor who runs an auto body store, and he of course has offered to fix this all up for me, and I think that's the route I'm going to go, because this is absolutely mind-numbing. What I like to do once the primer is dry is I'll go in with a little marker and just sort of make little notes to myself where I see little areas that need work. And that sort of helps me find them the next time around. And that's probably half of the trouble areas. There's still a lot more to go. And on that note, we'll bring this episode to a close. I'm just going to head back and do a little bit more body work, then do a little more steel fabrication, try to get a little bit more done before I head home for the night. As always, thanks for watching. There's plenty more episodes to watch. If you want to watch like from when I got the shell or when I began the project, it's all there. There's a playlist that'll kind of walk you through the whole build, so check it out. If you have any questions or if there's anything you want me to talk about, post it in the comments section below. You know the routine, you're not new to YouTube. We will see you for the next episode.
Because of him, to match the muscles of the Hulk.
I thought it was because you just copied the way I am.
If I was a child, I would give anything, go to a convention and be a celebrity like myself, or Stan Lee, just make that connection.